the most simple description I can use of what's different between taking a prescription and a supplement is a prescription is meant to override the system. A supplement is meant to make your system work the way it was designed. And so for people looking for a holistic approach, you don't just want an override. You don't want a Band-Aid on the problem. You want to go in and fix the reason the problem is there in the first place. So in the medical world, they've got this big range of normal. And if you fall too low or too high, now they're probably going to symptom manage you back into the normal range. But in the functional or holistic world, instead, what they're going to look at is your lab result optimal for you, even if it's within that normal range that the medical world would kind of ignore. And so it's an optimization and taking care of a root cause focus versus how do we just symptom manage and not really worry about where the problem's coming from in the first place.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the None of Your Business podcast. And today we have a super informative treat for all of you that is going to prove to be super beneficial in more ways than you could possibly imagine. Today's guest is none other than the amazing Staci Blume. And in full disclosure, listen, she is a business partner of mine, but we are here today to talk to you about the amazing concept that she has put together called Well Infused. You're going to love it because this is a concept that is disrupting the way that healthcare is being managed and administered all around the country, hopefully coming to a city near you soon. Staci, Dr. Staci, welcome to the None of Your Business podcast.
This should be fun.
Yeah, let's start off with this whole thing. First of all, because Well Infused is not the first successful venture that you have been involved in. Tell us a little bit, because I'd love for people to get an idea of where you came from. Mostly because when people listen to the podcast and they see one of the guests, they're like, oh, well, of course. If I were as smart as Staci and had been given $5 million from my parents when I was young, of course, I'd be doing that. And what we come to realize is that most people actually in their journey have plenty of trials, tribulations, losses, and lessons learned. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your journey prior to Well Infused.
Yeah. Well, first, my initial chiropractic practice, I purchased the day that I graduated. I'd done an internship in that office for a couple of months. Knew it was in my hometown, so that made it make sense to me to go back and start that way. And I remember going home at the end of every single day for the first 6 months and just sitting on the edge of my bed crying because I had the great opportunity, but to start with a very busy schedule that I was not prepared to handle at all. And I was trying to learn to be not just a good chiropractic provider, but how to be a business owner, which I had no experience or training in. And I was just trying to make sure that we collected more money than we spent, and that was as much as I knew. But I started to enjoy that component of it. And so over the course of almost 10 years that I had that initial practice, ended up quadrupling that practice by, number one, just putting patient care and patient results first. I attracted some really great associates. And then when I met my husband, Nate, knew I was eventually going to be moving. And so that started my brain space in, okay, well, how do I built this great business. How do I sell this business and make sure that I'm transferring it in a way that continues to take care of those patients and that the business survives? And so I have always had some really great coaches and mentors in my corner from very early on. I think I was just really blessed and, walk into the right room and connect with the right people. And when you surround yourself with those people, great things happen. So I had somebody who really coached and trained me through that process. That clinic is still doing beautifully. But then I moved to Indiana and my husband sold his practice and we went into business together. And it was a completely different kind of gut punch to start from zero as compared to starting with a schedule I wasn't even prepared to handle. So those were some serious gut check moments over the course of the first probably really 18 months to get that practice to a point where we felt like we were not just clicking again, but we'd both left very successful businesses. So to start over from zero was harder than if I had done it that way the first time. I had a lifestyle I was used to living and that had to change for a period of time, but great lessons learned in that. And I'm so glad to have the experience of starting with something successful and starting something from scratch that we had to really claw our way through to get to a healthy point. Because now I've had those experiences to be able to share with others. So we still have our chiropractic office in Indiana that's been open 7.5 years at this point. That's clicking along great. We've got great team members that are there and supporting us. But in 2020, through all of the different health changes happening in our country, realized that I wanted to onboard some services that did not fall well underneath the chiropractic scope of practice. And so where I was hoping to just add a few services to the clinic, we ended up creating an entirely new clinic that got its own name that was never even intended in the first place. So Well Infused, and we added the IV therapy, obviously bioidentical hormones, functional medicine, stem cell therapy, and all those other services. And I don't think that would have been possible if I hadn't gone through the ups and the downs of both of those two previous practice experiences. It's definitely brought a new learning curve for services that I don't even offer, but a great opportunity to be able to teach others how to confidently serve their patients in a way that's going to support a healthy business model in their lifestyles.
Well, how did that come about? So you're taking care of people in your chiropractic office. Yeah. Obviously getting tremendous results, 7.5 years, people, word of mouth and have a great reputation. Why did you decide that you wanted to even offer anything else? Why even venture into that? This is a huge risk. You expose yourself to what if that doesn't work? And maybe it doesn't work so much so that it impacts your existing business. Why did you even decide that you wanted to offer more things?
A real concern, and something that Nate and I really talked about. It's one of the reasons that it became a separate business, because even our business coaches and tax planning team and insurance team said, listen, protect what you already have. Like, you have something really great here. So be careful not to let one fail for the potential success of something else. And so we were very good about protecting what we had in the chiropractic piece, but there was a medical doctor next door to our chiropractic office. And I always joked, if she ever moves out, I'm taking her space and I'm going to do something with it. And once I started saying that out loud to other people, inevitably the medical doctor moved out, and the landlord came down and said, hey, before we list this, just so you know, there's going to be an empty space next to you. And I said, looked at my husband, and he just kind of rolled his eyes like, oh boy, here we go. I was like, don't list it. We'll take it. And so we ended up combining the two clinics, but I already at that time, I had kind of put that intention out there because there were services I was looking for myself that I could not find, or I could not find done the way I wanted them done, at the quality and the service level that I not only provided to other people, but expected for myself. And so at that time, our daughter was young. I had my daughter at the age of 37. So they call that the terrible term of a geriatric pregnancy. And went through a lot of hormone changes at that time. And when I looked for someone that could take care of me for those and through those hormone changes, I got put on a really long wait list. And so that was my indicator. Oh, there's a need and a very low supply of providers who are interested or trained properly to do that. So then I went out in search of, okay, well, we can't open this clinic with these services we can't provide. So before we get too far into it, we need to find a provider who not only is trained or willing to be trained in providing these services, but thinks about health the way that we do. So this is not just I'm throwing another medical doctor in to do the same services everybody goes to their community doctor for, but we're trying to break the mold and do things in a way that's going to get people results in a different way. And I put a little post out in a natural moms group just saying, hey, does anybody know of a great holistic-minded nurse practitioner? Ended up having coffee with, her name is Elizabeth. She is the clinical director for Well Infused. But at that time, she was a nurse practitioner who took care of her family from a holistic standpoint, but stuck in a mask in a corner in a medical office, treating people in a way that she would never take care of her own friends and family. And so she was looking for an exit. And that's what allowed us to really expand on that service menu based on what she felt really excited about and what we wanted to offer or would do for ourselves.
So you said you were looking for someone that would provide the services, but that viewed health the way you did. How do you view health? There's multiple ways to view health?
Lots of different ways to view health, but they fall into two big categories. Number one, we're gonna run labs and we're gonna symptom manage and we're gonna make recommendations on prescriptions. Or what I heard when I was kind of going through my challenges was like, oh no, that's just a normal part of getting older. You're just gonna have to deal with it. So very, very medical minded. And then there's the more holistic minded, and there's lots of terms people use through that, functional doctors, naturopathic, there's lots of different ways, but all of those natural approaches are typically geared at how do we fix the problem, not just cover up the symptom. And so that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted for myself. I wasn't interested in taking a medication that would help me sleep better, or taking, even clients who come in and the first step with high blood pressure is just, let's give you a medication. Well, how can we improve vestal health, and how can we change your diet? Not just in a way that's like counting calories, but what does your body specifically need? And so that's where the functional medicine came in. Functional medicine providers also are known to look at labs, the exact same labs a medical doctor will run, but look at those results very differently. So in the medical world, they've got this big range of normal, and if you fall too low or too high, now they're probably going to symptom manage you back into the normal range. But in the functional or holistic world, instead, what they're going to look at is your lab result optimal for you, even if it's within that normal range that the medical world would kind of ignore. And so it's an optimization and taking care of a root cause focus versus how do we just symptom manage and not really worry about where the problem's coming from in the first place.
Okay, so that's super interesting. I want to go back to this idea of they fall in a range. Are you saying that sometimes I could be out of the range and be normal, or are you saying that it should be a different range? What does that mean? Sort of that you view things differently, and especially relative to this range.
Yeah. Vitamin D is the easiest example. In the medical world, they'll say, okay, if you're, and I don't know the real number, but they'll, for example, say, okay, if you're above a 20, then your vitamin D levels are fine. They might tell you that 100, your vitamin D levels are way too high, and this is a big concern. In our functional interpretation, we would tell you if you want optimal immune system function, then your vitamin D levels should be at least a 70, all the way up to 100. So now we see people who get these labs drawn. Maybe it's a 60-year-old woman who comes in that's chronically fatigued, has joint aches all the time. She's got a low-grade cough that she just can't get past, like her immune system just won't fight. But the medical doctors say, well, that's just part of getting older, and that's normal, because they don't recognize that vitamin D level of 20 is way too low for her immune system to be functioning properly. And so it's a big difference in perception of what's normal, which quite frankly isn't normal. All they're doing is saying, okay, well, what's the average of all the people who get these labs drawn? So a crazy way of viewing this is that, number one, who typically gets their labs drawn? It's usually people who aren't feeling well and are looking for information. And then when it comes to the lab results, the normal range is actually just an average of all of those people getting their labs drawn. So do you want to land right in the middle of the average of all of the sick people? Nobody wants the average American's health status. So we can't go based on those averages. We have to figure out, okay, what do you uniquely need? Maybe you feel great when your vitamin B levels are 600 and somebody else feels, oh my gosh, so much better at 900. Well, now we need to continue optimizing for you, not trying to normalize how you feel because of the average of all the people out there.
So a big difference between normal and optimal.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really good distinction. Let's look at then the different services, because so you create this thing, Well Infused. You've talked about labs. Let's talk first about that. The starting point is that everybody comes in and gets their labs drawn or blood work drawn. Yeah. And so they do the labs. And look, if you're on social media, you scroll through, you see this everywhere.
Sure.
Lab work, genetic testing, blood testing. Tell me what you're doing at Well Infused. Is it any different than these things I'm seeing on social media? What information is it giving you, and how important is that?
Yeah, the information is incredibly important. And when it comes down to the actual data we're getting from the labs, it might not be any different than some of these places online. Some of these places online do a really good job of, I even see now 120 different markers. And that data is great. And we can actually use that data in our clinics. But what they're missing, like the giant problem and bridge from getting that data from somewhere online into actually doing something about it, is when a patient gets back all of these numbers and maybe even sees, oh, great, I'm optimal in these categories and suboptimal here. They have no direction. They don't know what to do about it.
Okay, but typically when I'm seeing these things online, are they doing this thing that you talked about, this optimal, or are they going to tell me if I'm normal? Because how would I know if I got a report and it just said I was normal? I don't know. They probably use like red, yellow, green, and I was green in all of them. That means I'm normal. That doesn't even necessarily mean that I'm optimal.
Correct.
So how do you know what's optimal for me?
I think part of that is trial and error. How do you feel based on what the lab profile looks like? Very rarely does someone come in, we do get it, but very rarely does someone come in saying, I feel excellent. Give me a snapshot of my lab work right now so I know that my goal is to always keep these numbers here. That happens, which is great. We love working those with, it's very smart. What we typically do is we'll grab those markers to begin with. And even if everything falls within the normal range, we need to tweak where those optimals are for each person. So what one company online says is optimal still might not be appropriate for you. And that's the other missing piece that the online places have, is they don't have somebody clinically who knows you, who knows your health. They don't ask for a health history. They take your blood, they give you your numbers. Good information, but not clinically applicable, because they don't know what medications have you been taking. What is your family health history? Have you ever experienced high blood pressure in the past? For women, did you have high blood sugar when you were pregnant and now it's still just a little bit high? All of those things come into play when making recommendations for someone. But when you're doing everything through an online service provider, there's no clinician behind it. In fact, you read the fine print at the bottom of those reports, and they will tell you, we are not a healthcare company, we are a tech company. So they're giving you good tech, they're giving you good data, but the patient doesn't know, they're not clinically trained, what to do about that data and how to help themselves feel better based on the numbers that they're given. That's where our providers are well trained and come into play. All right, let's uniquely dive into your numbers and what your health goals are. And now we can create a customized plan to help you hopefully eventually get a lab profile that we are saying, here's your profile of what we should always be striving for and what the goal is to help keeping you feeling and functioning your best.
So a big difference between, I guess, this tech company and just getting data and a personalized approach. That's the distinction. At Well Infused, you're offering a personalized approach, not just with AI. And not saying that they're read by, but when you say tech company, that's what came to mind. Sure. Versus being read by a person that actually not even just reading it, but also has the history and the connection and understands all of the other parts that might contribute to this data. But once I get the data and I find that there's a couple areas that I'm suboptimal, and maybe that gives me insights into why I'm feeling so tired, or why I'm not sleeping, or why I can't concentrate, or maybe even why they've told me I have these diseases, diabetes, Lyme's disease, whatever. What do you do? What's so unique then about your recovery process? How do you help somebody to get those numbers back to being optimal?
The step number one, we give them very specific food advice, like what should you be eating? We have some people who will, come in already trying to do the right thing. So I cut out gluten or dairy. Good, wonderful first step for anybody. But we have some clients who we say, listen, you really need to focus on a ketogenic diet. Maybe we tell them, listen, you should be fasting for 16 hours a day and only eating in an 8-hour window. Based on what their numbers come back with, we can customize and tweak those in a million different ways. And then we monitor the progress. So they're going to meet with a nurse practitioner. The nurse practitioner is going to get on the phone with them after 30 days. How are the food changes doing? Are you following the recommendations? There are nutritional supplements that we advise. If you're deficient in something, your body can't heal in a state of deficiency. So how do we supply a supplement or a food strategy that's going to help them get the nutrition they need? So all of those efforts are actually getting them results. And then from a service menu standpoint, that's the other big failure of the online companies. They can't provide you a service. Like from here, now we can customize. You don't enjoy taking a handful of supplements, every single day. That's okay. Let's give you a couple and then get you in for a weekly IV hydration drip. Now you're going to get the vitamins that you're missing. You're going to get extra hydration, keep your body feeling good, and not have to take quite as many products. We also have services like bioidentical hormones, peptide therapy. So these aren't things that we need to start everyone off with on day one, But depending on what their goals are and what their tolerance is for making those lifestyle changes, sky's the limit for most of them. So ozone therapy, amazing for autoimmune conditions. The number of, I would kind of be afraid to find out the percentage of people in the US now who've been diagnosed or have symptoms of an autoimmune condition. It's very high. We can see those autoimmune conditions come into remission with ozone IV, but that's not an online service. You can't do that on your own at home.
And then what about regenerative therapy?
Regenerative therapy is kind of top of the tier when it comes to, as long as we've done all those basics first and handled the simpler things, now we can introduce stem cells or exosomes into your system to help your body repair and rebuild in some of those bigger ways, from major joint damage and injury, but also from a systemic standpoint. We have people who come into our clinics and do the IVs on a yearly basis because they want to prevent cognitive decline, because they want to keep their body healing and renewing. They want to feel 35 when maybe they're pushing 60 or 65. There are ways that we can do that. And we have to set the foundation with baseline nutrition and home lifestyle factors first, but then the services we offer just change the playing field entirely.
I want to come back to that stem cell in just a second, but I want to first go to, you said, well, one person might need a ketogenic diet and one person might need to have a 16-hour fasting window. Are you saying that at Well Infused, there's no one size fits all? Because I hear it all the time, like, oh, you need to do carnivore. So it seems to me like a lot of people have like their preferred, like you have to be vegetarian or carnivore, or you have to be intermittent fasting, or you have to do regular fasting. Or so are you saying it depends on the individual what will work best?
Always depends on the individual what will work best. And there have been periods of time, one particular client comes to mind, where for 6 months she did only vegan. Like we needed a real huge reset in her system, and she wasn't tolerating animal proteins very well. So in her case, it was a 6 months period where she was completely vegan and she stuck with it and did great. But because inevitably that's going to change how your system functions over time, now we start having to modify what you are eating. Okay, let's reintroduce this and see how you do.
Is that because of the labs? Like we're seeing deficiencies, like you're not getting enough meat or iron, or
Correct.
So you start to see this and you're like, hey, this is working well, but now the numbers are not optimal anymore in some of these ranges.
Exactly.
So then we tweak based off of that.
We've changed some of these key markers, but now your body's functioning differently. Maybe your digestive system is actually absorbing nutrition from protein again, and you can break down with enzymes and you're absorbing that food. And so it's never a set it and forget it type of situation, which is why when anyone comes in and becomes a client with us, the goal is that we're repeating these labs a couple of times a year at least to make sure that we're constantly course correcting. If we give them one plan and expect that they need that exact same plan forever and ever, then we're not really taking into consideration that we expect their body to change with the recommendations that we're making them.
And before we talk stem cells, you mentioned peptides, and everybody talks about peptide. But when you say peptides, I think the majority of people are like, oh, like the weight loss ones, right? But there's so many other breakthroughs and advances in peptides. What are some of the other peptides? I mean, so if you need weight loss, do you offer that?
We certainly do. We do it a little bit differently than what you'll see the online providers, again, just sending off, a one size fits all. Here's your prescription. Take this every week. And we monitor more closely. So we don't want people just to lose weight. We want them to lose the right kind of weight. So we're going to monitor.
People talk about losing muscle.
Correct.
When you're doing that.
Yep. People don't eat enough. That's something that we like to monitor. Make sure you are getting the nutrition you need for your body to function. If all you care about is dropping pounds on the scale, there's a lot of health markers that could go wrong in that process. So we usually start very low and increase very slowly up until a point. But even people on our maximum doses are usually far beyond what most places would just ship them in an anonymous box.
What do you mean far beyond the dose, or far beyond?
The dosages are usually lower.
Dosages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. What are some other peptides though that you find are incredibly useful that somebody that's watching that's like, I don't need to lose weight, but could benefit from? What are some of the breakthroughs that are out there?
Yeah. BPC 157 is a great one for digestive health. It's also really good for joint injuries. And so when people come in and they have like a new major joint injury and they're interested in healing as quickly as they can, which most people are, then we'll add that into the mix. TB 500, also very supportive in joint and injury repair, but also good for the immune system. Samorelin, actually, when I get back home this week, I'm going to start on a Samorelin protocol, which is meant to help your body build muscle. So again,
maybe you would do that with
you can do it They call it peptide stacking, where you
Okay.
can basically what you're doing with these peptides are things your body would naturally produce anyway.
Okay, but a lot of people think that it's like cheating.
I
So
know.
like if and it kind of falls into the category of, you mentioned the hormones. Like it falls into the category of maybe taking testosterone or human growth hormone. You're saying they're natural. Like explain that. Like is it cheating to be taking these peptides?
Absolutely not. I think the cheat is when you're trying to override your system. What we're doing with Well Infused and what we're doing specifically with peptides or any of the services we offer is reminding your system how it was designed to work. We're just trying to turn the dials on some of the processes that maybe your body's just not doing very well with on its own. BPC 157 naturally produced in the digestive system. Well, if your digestive system's not working well, then you're probably not producing that very well.
Kind of like taking a supplement.
It
Kind of
is
like taking
very
a
much
vitamin.
like a supplement, very much, which is why it's also regulated in a very similar category. I see like the most simple description I can use of what's different between taking a prescription and and a supplement is a prescription is meant to override the system. A supplement is meant to make your system work the way it was designed. And so for people looking for a holistic approach, you don't just want an override. You don't want a Band-Aid on the problem. You want to go in and fix the reason the problem is there in the first place. So all the peptides that you hear about are normally produced inside the human body. But when you're not producing them in the right ratios or at the right time, your body can't get benefit from them. Reintroducing them through either injection or an oral source in many cases is just helping re-regulate those peptides that would normally be there anyway.
What about this methylene blue? I hear a lot about that. Is that a peptide? Is that
Not a
what that is? What is
peptide,
that?
considered, that one is more of a synthetic compound.
Okay.
But that synthetic compound, when created in a lab, so it's got that crazy blue color, and if you're using it, you use the restroom and your toilet turns blue because it goes through your system that way. But it has a way of attaching to different parts of our body that will help upregulate different functions again. So for most people taking a methylene blue, biggest things that they're noticed are mental acuity, like high mental sharpness. It helps with oxygen delivery in your system. And so mitochondrial function and mitochondrial turnover, that's how it helps with the energy piece, because the mitochondria, most people know, are the powerhouses of energy in your system. If we can get those mitochondria functioning better, then the most people will notice that translates into, oh my goodness, I am thinking clearly. I can get A through Z done without taking 17 breaks or without having 14 different distractions. And they're noticing that they're just more productive throughout the course of the day.
And let's then talk stem cells. I noticed that there's a lot of confusion about stem cells. Whenever I talk to someone about stem cells, the very first thing they always say to me is, "Well, isn't that illegal?"
Yeah.
Is it illegal? Like, how did you get
Not
around
illegal.
this?
Yeah.
Did you find a well-infused loophole? Tell
Yeah.
people about the legality
Okay.
of stem cells.
It is definitely legal in the United States. There are just bumpers around how we utilize it. So what most people's brain goes to is, oh my goodness, that comes from an aborted fetal tissue. That's unethical. That's why they only allow it to be done in other countries. And it's actually just not true. In the US, we do not use that type of tissue.
Could you use it? Do some places use it?
In
Is
other
that-
countries,
so
they
it's not
do.
a myth.
Not a myth.
It could be.
Yep.
Okay, but you don't. So
do not.
what are you doing?
So the tissue that we use for stem cells comes from donated umbilical cord tissue. So any mom, when they fill out the paperwork in the hospital, what do you want to have happen after your birth? Most of the time, historically, it's just been, yep, that's medical waste. I don't need it. Now you'll hear a lot more about moms storing cord blood, so to be used later for their child or for their family. And the other option would be donation. So when they say elect, yeah, if somebody else could benefit, almost like an organ donation, someone else could benefit from the tissue, by all means, go ahead and take it. And so it always comes from a full-term, healthy mom, healthy baby delivery. They happen to be only umbilical cords that come from a C-section delivery, because then the umbilical cord is completely intact. It didn't go through the birth canal to have any twisting or stretching or pulling or damaging of those cells. So before the team comes in and actually takes that tissue to a lab, they do an extensive health history background on the mom, making sure that the mom doesn't have any health conditions, no diseases, no concerns, or reason to believe that this would be wasted tissue, that they wouldn't be able to actually use it for health benefits for someone else. So then it gets to the lab. The lab that we utilize and any lab that anyone should be utilizing should be registered with the FDA, which also obviously means it's not illegal. The FDA does have regulations around how this is used and who it's used for. And so our particular lab has basically every certification you could possibly use for, is it clean? Is it healthy? How are they taking care of the cells? For the lab that we use specifically, I don't want preservatives in my body. So we utilize a lab that takes those cells and basically cleans and cryo freezes them only. So they're ready to use. They're kept in a freezer that's below 82 below zero. We actually have one in the Noblesville clinic, just because we go through a lot of stem cells and it's important to keep them in that state. And so once those stem cells get to the lab and all of those tests are done, they're cleaned and put in a vial. We know that there's 30 million cells in any vial that we're utilizing. And then when a patient is ready for that service, they ship them to us. And there's a very special process we go through to administer those, either through joint injection or through IV infusion. So certainly it's legal. If our malpractice covers the service, you can be guaranteed that we're not doing anything outside the lines. It's just a huge misconception. I even have clients that will send me videos from TikTok or somewhere else saying, oh yeah, see, this doctor said it's illegal. Why would they say that? I'm like, they're just uninformed. They just don't know that we absolutely can use these cells in particular circumstances. It's considered still researched, although the research goes back to the 1970s. I'm pretty sure we've proven this by now. But because the product is a biologic and not falling under pharma regulations, a lot of people just don't want it used. It does solve health problems. That takes people out of the medical system and needing those medical services.
So why do so many people go to foreign countries? Is it because they want the aborted fetal tissue? Like what? I don't understand that. Like, because I hear it all the time. Like, oh, I went here. I'm
going
there.
to Mexico.
Why are they doing that? Is it just cheaper? Is that what's up?
So they will often advertise that they're going to give them more stem cells for a lesser price.
Okay.
But the difference is the quality of the cell. So in other countries, what we are not allowed to do in the US is now take those cells back to the lab, put them in a petri dish, and let them artificially replicate. If a cell replicates wrong, we call that cancer. So the potential to take those cells to a lab and let them artificially replicate doesn't seem like it aligns with my overall goal of giving my body the best quality product and helping it heal and repair on its own. In other countries, they allow that. So that's why they can tell you, I can take 1,000 cells and turn them into 100,000 cells and sell them to you at a much lesser price. So
wait, isn't that what happens anyways? If you put the 1,000 cells in my body, don't they turn into 100,000?
Exactly
cells?
right.
Oh.
Exactly right. They're going to replicate in your own body, but in a way that your body designates. Otherwise, you're replicating cells in a petri dish in an unregulated fashion. And so they'll tell you higher cell count, lower price, but the cell isn't the same.
And I remember a long time ago, you'd hear about these athletes going to Europe and they were doing this PRP, which is now a little more common, but still you don't see it all over the place. What's the difference? Because sometimes I feel like people kind of interchange this PRP and stem cells. What's the difference?
So it does get confusing based on the terminology because PRP is a type of stem cell. It's just a stem cell coming from your own body. So with PRP or platelet-rich plasma, what the provider will do is they'll do a blood draw. They'll take your blood. There's a very special centrifuge and a special tube and a special filtration system that takes from your blood and isolates the platelets. So platelet-rich plasma. Then they can take those platelets or that PRP and reintroduce it. You can inject that in a knee, which can work great if you're 25 or 35 and healthy and have a system prepared to do some healing and repair.
Is that why they did it a lot with the athletes?
Absolutely. Okay. Yep. They've got a healthy system. You're young enough and your cells, so those stem cells replicate naturally in our body. We have stem cells everywhere. They're in our bone marrow. They're in our fat tissue. You can find them in your teeth. All of our body has stem cells in it. It's just isolating those stem cells. And they replicate at a very specific rate. That replication rate as we age comes down. And so let's say 1,000 cells turns into 30,000 cells in 30 days when you're 12 years old. But when you're 60 years old, that 1,000 cells maybe turns into 1,050. So at a certain age, our rate of degeneration is faster than our rate of repair. That's why people are like, oh my gosh, something happened when I was 40.
Backwards.
the scale tipped. And so reintroducing these cells that are replicating at that very fast rate
You're
is why
talking about
people,
then the ones that you use.
the stem cells,
that go at a very fast
exactly,
rate.
the stem cells.
Ones in my body are going at a slower rate.
Correct.
Basically a net loss, right? That's why
Yeah.
we're breaking down. But if I could introduce these stem cells that were replicating faster, I could get at a net gain.
Absolutely.
See a positive effect
And
on that.
the research and the statistics even show, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's actually very impressive how many cells those ones you introduce will replicate into. You can still use the PRP for, a shoulder injury or a knee injury because you're isolating them. Yeah, it's a great little boost. And for some people, it's enough to get them the result they're looking for. If you've got bone-on-bone injuries at the age of 65, you're probably never going to get the result you're looking for from PRP. And that's where the stem cell option comes in. Or the MSC, the mesenchymal stem cell, which is the one that comes from umbilical cord tissue.
Mesenchymal stem cell, folks, that's what you're looking for. Lastly, you've had such tremendous success. Now you've moved into scaling Well Infused. So you said there's one in Noblesville. There's many more coming on the horizon. So for everybody that's watching, that's like, oh my gosh, I want that near me. Tell everyone about the scaling efforts. Tell everybody about what you have going on. And for anybody who might be interested in having a Well Infused in their town that they own, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So 6 more locations awarded. We'll probably have a couple more by the end of next month. Texas, Georgia, Virginia, Wisconsin. So definitely spreading around, and we're getting a lot of inquiries on that. But the process to get to scale has, I think someone told me, just to get the paperwork ready for that, it'll take you a couple of years. For anyone who knows me, they know I work fast. And so I thought that was ridiculous, but it actually did take a couple of years. It's a lot of work to make sure that you have not only the systems in place, like how do you give an IV, but how do you replicate the business systems? How do you make sure that as you're giving this incredibly thick, 2,000-page playbook to a new business owner, how do they grasp the material and how do they translate that into another successful clinic? And so it's been a great opportunity, a learning opportunity for me to take it from my brain and how does my brain work and me being the doer to teaching other people how they can do this, but setting them up for success based on the systems that we have. So if you're interested in something like that, we love to have conversations about that potential, because I know, like, as a chiropractor, I can serve each patient I adjust one-on-one, but we are going to have a bigger impact on the health of our communities when it's one-on-many. And so teaching other people how to be able to do that just extends our ability to have an impact on the health of everyone. So to get in touch with me, it's just Dr. Staci, DrStaci at wellinfused.com. Wellinfused.com is our website, and you can find a franchise page there. That's just going to have you fill out a quick form to request more information, and we can send more information to you that way. But we love the opportunity to work with already successful entrepreneurs who know how to run a business and are very excited and passionate about this particular service model, that it aligns with the way they'd want to be taken care of. Those are going to be our best ambassadors for the brand overall, but want to see that they have these opportunities in their communities for themselves and their families.
Well, this is a group who listens and watches this show who are successful entrepreneurs. So if that's you, if that's speaking to you, reach out to Dr. Staci, DrStaci at wellinfused.com, or visit wellinfused.com. There's a franchise page. You can get information. You can apply there, submit your information so that you can get into queue. 6 already awarded, 2 of them open. Another, you're saying 2 more coming. That would put Well Infused at 10 locations here in very short order. So hopefully coming to a city or town very near to you so that you can experience all of these amazing things in your health. Dr. Staci, thank you for sharing your gifts with everybody. We appreciate having you on the show.
Absolutely.
And for everyone else, I hope that you learned something new. I don't know how in the world we could possibly top this, but we will give it a shot next week. Make sure you tune in for a brand new edition of the None of Your Business podcast.